Hey, welcome to the BGX podcast. My name is Phil, and my guest today is a board game reviewer, board game influencer, and he's just a great guy. This is Ian. Welcome, Ian, to the show.
Hello, everybody, and if you're watching, welcome to my very small basement where I have lots of things that don't mean anything except for what I do. So
Excellent.
there's a lot of stuff in this little room.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on the show. Why don't you tell everybody just kind of a little bit about yourself and tell us how you got into the board gaming hobby?
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Ian. I have a TikTok called BoardFeelings, and that's kind of what I do. A TikTok and YouTube called BoardFeelings, and that's what I do right now. But that wasn't what I did for a long time. So, back probably in 2012, I started doing dumb YouTube videos for like Minecraft stuff. So I was a Minecraft YouTuber for a little while. I then got not bored of that, but yeah, I got pretty much bored of that. So then I started doing movie reviews, and so I got really into movies. There was a point where I was getting screeners of movies, and I would go to an opening of a movie before the movie comes out, and then I would review the movie. I did that for probably about 3 years. It was a lot of fun. I would see probably 2 to 4 movies in a week sometimes and review them, and
Wow.
mostly YouTube videos, which I believe it's still out there, but I don't post anything to it anymore. um, and I did that for, like I said, 3 years, and then a friend of mine actually started. He wanted to get into a board game. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll play a board game. It was once a month. So we started. We wanted to get into D&D, but we were a little afraid of the vastness of D&D. So we found a board game. It was called Tomb of Annihilation. Played that once a month, and then I kind of fell in deep, and here I am. I now have a collection of almost 200 board games, and I love them. They're fantastic. And so I was doing YouTube videos for movies, and that just naturally switched into YouTube for board games. And then TikTok came out, and I was like, sure, let's give this TikTok thing a shot. And it's weird. I don't quite understand it still, but I've been doing it for, I guess, a year and a half, and it's fun. It's enjoyable.
Okay, awesome. So you've been reviewing things for a long time. What's
Yes.
been unique about board games? I mean, what have you found as you've been reviewing games now for quite a while?
Yeah, so what I noticed, especially going from movies to board games, movies have a very strict critique model, and a few people kind of go out of that and talk about like other things, but overall, like a movie can be bad, objectively bad,
Hmm.
and but and you can give reasons why it's bad. Someone may still like the movie, but you still say, okay, but it's bad. Like Space Jam. I love Space Jam. It's a bad movie. um, and so, but like with board games are different because board games, you can have a great board game that someone just despises and hates, or vice versa, or a bad board game that people just love. And you can't really say why. Like someone will say, oh, it's random, but I love random. I
Hmm.
think that makes it exciting. That makes it fun. Or like Exploding Kittens, there's no strategy to it. Oh, but I love that. I love how the funny pictures and the fact that you can die. That's doesn't happen in almost any other review format but board games, and that's what I find enjoyable. And I'll actually get into my name, why I chose the name Board Feelings, because the idea is that board games give us emotions, and those emotions drive whether we like something or not. And so I'm not talking about whether a board game is good or bad. I don't care whether it's good or bad. How does it make me feel? How does it make me feel excited? Does it make me feel sad? Does it make me feel frustrated? And I use that as a guide to then talk about the board game. And that's kind of what I do mostly on my YouTube channel. I'd sometimes dive into that on my TikToks, but TikToks are usually for skits, and I do raps occasionally, stuff like that. So I don't do much reviews on TikTok, but I do sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point about, kind of not being able to assign a this is a bad game. I mean, a lot of people talk about Monopoly and they're like, well,
Mhm.
it's just a bad game, right? But I was watching a video of somebody's and they basically said if that was the case, then competitive Monopoly couldn't exist, and people
Yep.
who are good at Monopoly couldn't exist because it's just a bad game. But that's not necessarily true. I mean, people who are competitive with Monopoly consistently do well at the game no matter who they're playing against,
Yep.
that shows that there is some strategy and that there is some, component in the game that you can get good at.
Yep.
So I think it's, maybe quick to judge, but if you really kind of pull that apart, like you said, it's not about saying this is good or this is bad. It's just, if you like these things, if you like trading and convincing people to give away their life to you, then this is probably the right game for you.
Yeah, and I watched some videos a while ago. It was a mathematician interviewing a Monopoly player, and
Yeah.
they talked about like knowing which properties to buy and knowing the standard deviation of the die rolls to know which ones you probably land on. Like there's strategy in there. Like
Mm.
yes, it is still a die roll, but there's strategy in knowing how to react to the die rolls. And that's something that most people don't get, and they just get upset and flip the table. but but yeah, so I agree. I hate Monopoly too. I don't like it, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. It won't sell millions of copies every year if it was bad, you
Right.
know.
Right.
It's just not a game that board gamers tend to play.
Sure. Well, and yeah, I think it's about what do you enjoy? What do you like? For me, I'm kind of in the same camp. Monopoly's not the worst game ever. It's got a lot of nostalgia. It's kind of our family's game. So anytime our family's together, we're going to play that one game of Monopoly every year. Like that's just kind of the standard. But for me, I do like more strategic games where I have a lot more control over what happens.
Yeah.
At least from my perspective, and then obviously everybody else has control over theirs. But
Yeah.
I find when I have total control and I can kind of set my own path forward, I find that a more enriching experience.
Yeah.
So I think I think it is just about what do you prefer. For a statistician, they might be like, dice rollers are great because I can run those standard deviations in my head and figure out what I'm going to land on and, what's most likely I'm going to land on. So,
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
I'm mostly a Euro gamer. I like a lot of, I know my strategy. I'm kind of building my own thing, and there may be some interference between players, but mostly I'm doing my own thing and
Mm.
optimizing the game, I did a video a while ago. I called it I called it player versus player versus player or player versus game, and that's kind of how I describe it. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to play a player, I want to play the game,
Mhm.
and so I don't like direct confrontation games. They're fine. All of my friends play those games, so tend to play them as well. But like I would prefer to optimize the game and know what best action to take to win points to then win the game,
Right.
so those are the type of games I tend to enjoy, but I play just about anything.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of an interesting parallel with like poker. You either like Texas Hold'em or blackjack, and I mean sometimes you like both, but usually you're more favorable to one or the other. In Hold'em, you're playing the players, like you're dealt cards, but it doesn't really matter what your cards are. It matters what you
Yeah.
convince everyone else you have. Whereas in blackjack, it doesn't matter who you're playing with. Like the dealer can be the nicest guy or the meanest guy. If his cards are better, his cards are better. Like you're playing the game, and you're deciding what's the standard that you want to take. So,
Yep.
yeah, I agree, and you can't call either game bad, but some
Yeah.
people will prefer one over the other for sure.
Yeah, which is like I said, the craziest thing about board games is you can't call a game bad. Like you can't do that. It just might not be what you like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. So, this kind of leads into game mechanics and, different styles of play. What would you say if you had to pick which kind of your favorite game mechanics or favorite combination of game mechanics?
yeah, so I was really big into worker placement. I still would probably say worker placement's my favorite. But I've been getting into a lot of financial games.
Okay.
By trade, I'm a financial analyst. That's what my day job is.
Okay.
And so when I started discovering like finance games of optimizing pricing strategies and like Smartphone Inc. is a good
Mm.
entry level economic financial game, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy being able to manipulate that. And lately, I've been getting into, I say lately, it's been a year or two. I've been getting into 18xx, and that's a whole nother field of train games and stock market manipulation and route building, stuff like that.
Mm.
And I love that as well. And that's, to me, that's probably my favorite. Stock market manipulation,
Yeah.
and stocks, buying and trading stocks. That's probably my favorite, but I also play those the least, if that makes it, because they're so big, they just
Right.
take a long time.
Yeah.
So, um, so that's what, so yeah, if I was choose a mainstream one, it'd probably be worker placement. But if I choose like my true heart, it'd probably like economic and stocks and stuff like that. So
Sure.
yeah,
Well, and I imagine it's probably hard to get a group together to play those kind of games,
it is. It is.
of like-minded individuals who are ready to try to manipulate the stock market with you.
I've had to reach out on Facebook to random groups to find people to play with, and I found some, but even then, like I don't, I it's like once a year we play,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just because it takes time, and it's an investment of my time that I don't always have time. I literally don't have time sometimes, and so
Right.
it's tough.
Yeah, for sure. So, going back to kind of getting into gaming, what was your gateway game? I mean, what's the game that really launched your experience with
Yeah.
board games and really got you into the hobby, in the modern sense?
Yeah, well, I talked about it was in 2017, so pretty recently, when my friend and I started playing Tomb of Annihilation,
Right.
which is a dungeon crawler. But I'm actually going to go a little further back than that because um, this was probably 2013, maybe. A friend introduced me and my wife to Ticket to Ride Europe, and so she was staying with us for about a week, and we played it probably 4 or 5 times over that week. We loved it so much. So when she left, she took it with her, and so we went out and we bought it,
Right.
and that's not a cheap game. At least
Yeah.
I don't know what the prices are now, but we paid like $50 and we're like, oh, that's an expensive game. I mean, now that's
Yeah.
nothing compared to some of my other games.
Right. Right.
But that was like a big investment for us, going from nothing into Ticket to Ride. So I played that for quite a while. That was just our game. Um, and then I want to say it was about 2015, probably. I randomly heard about Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Okay.
And so I bought that. Uh, and I played quite a bit of that. Actually, I love that game. I love Betrayal at House on the Hill. I then bought the Betrayal at Baldur's Gate. I played that. And then I bought Betrayal Legacy and I played that. So
Mm.
I think that is a fantastic like gateway game because it gives you that sense of co-op in the beginning,
Right.
and then it gives you a boss battle. And yes, it's random. It has its problems. I get it has its problems. It can be super unbalanced.
Yeah.
You can get to the haunt and read the haunt. There was one time, one of the haunts, you needed to find the trader had to find a specific tile, and that tile, the room tile, happened to be at the bottom of the deck. There was no way they were going to win.
Right.
No way at all. And that sucks, but
Mm.
it's a fun, enjoyable like experience, and that's what I had with it for my 3-4 years before I got actually into gaming. So
Yeah.
yeah, Ticket to Ride is probably my gateway. It was probably a loose gateway, but
Sure.
then Betrayed House on the Hill really got me there. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Those are two of my gateways as well, in addition to Catan.
nice.
But Betrayal was really my first experience with a game that's not, one of the classics of, Risk, Life, Sorry,
Yeah.
those kind of, the games we all played as kids. And I had a similar experience. I mean, the first time I played, we ended up having a haunt that was pretty reasonable, and like it felt good. It was 1 versus 3, and like it felt like a normal game. But I've played a lot since then. I'm trying to get the upgrade pack right now. I've got it on my wish list, because the cards are just heinous, and I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen the upgrade pack. They have one now with rollers,
With
where you actually just
yes.
roll and it clicks into the spot where the number is. So I've got to get that.
Fantastic.
But I recently got the expansion, the Widow's Walk, which adds the attic, and it adds a ton more items. So we found that super fun. But we played a scenario one time where the haunt was basically, I think it was a vampire haunt, and it was something to the effect of you have to find the pistol and be standing in the pentagram chamber and then shoot the vampire. And it just so happened that the person who had the pistol was already in the pentagram chamber, which was at the end of a long hall, which of course means you can shoot the person through any line of sight. So it's like the first person's turn, they were like, okay, you're dead. And then the game was like, it was literally one turn after the haunt and the game was over. So that one didn't feel so good. But
yeah,
we've definitely had other worse. One of the things, one of our house rules with Betrayal, when we're introducing it to new people, because it was one of the games I kind of pull out with, If I feel like my friends are a little bit more okay with some RPG, a little bit of light
Yeah.
RPG, I'll pull that one out. And one of our house rules is if you're a new player, you don't get to be you won't be the haunter.
Yeah.
You won't be the haunt revealer.
Yeah.
So if we roll the dice and the haunt is revealed, but then it's you're the traitor, we just pretend that you rolled a higher number and keep going until someone either rolls and it's no traitor or it's somebody who's played before. So that's one we use to kind of keep the game from, because if it's your first time ever playing a modern game and then you have to go off to a room by yourself and read your own traitor's tome, that's a lot of pressure, and you don't know the rules of how to attack, and that can be a lot.
And especially in the original Betrayal, like there's a lot of, they're not always written perfectly well. Like you don't always know exactly what you have to do, and then someone will be like, well, I'm doing this. Well, how can you do that? It says it in the book. Because does it say it in the book? And then you read and you're like, oh no, it doesn't say that.
Right.
And so it can be kind of vague sometimes of what it means. So
and like traitors don't have to do the negative effects of moving from a room to a room. They can go through catacombs without rolling. I had a game one time where I was the traitor and I was invisible. And so I could move wherever I wanted to move and then do a certain action to basically, I was trying to convert them to my side or something. But because I was invisible, I just would show up in a room and be like, I'm attacking you. And they'd be like, how did you get in my room? And so that was like, I couldn't tell them that I'm invisible because that's kind of some of the point. Yeah. But then they didn't feel like it was fair. So definitely the rules can be a little bit heinous sometimes with what am I actually supposed to do and how am I supposed to let them know without letting them know? But
and since I've sold that for the original version, and then I bought Baldur's Gate because I don't like to have multiples of similar games, Sure. And then I sold that when I got Legacy, so I have Legacy now, and Legacy fixes that a bit.
Okay.
Just because you can physically show people your book. And when there's a discrepancy, you can talk about it. Like it gives a little more clarity and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, so it can cause a lot of problems though if people are like, "What? How are you doing that?" So I don't know. That's just what I can do.
Right. So. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's I've also heard that Mansions of Madness. I don't know if you played that. It's on my wish list. I've heard that it's sort of a better version of Betrayal at House on the Hill. So I'm anxious to get that one and give it a try.
That was one that the group that I was playing with when we were playing Tomb of Annihilation. The second game, after we finished the campaign, we were looking for a new game. We almost got Mansions of Madness. We decided not to. We got something else. But no, because I have not played Mansions of Madness because we decided on something else. But I would have if we went in an alternate universe. Maybe I did.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I mean, do you have any? What's kind of your particular favorite? Do you have a game artist or designer that you really like? I mean, who are you watching in the space as far as
yeah? So I mean, I love Stonemaier games. Scythe is my favorite game, and so whenever I'm a diehard Jamie Stegmaier fan. So if he comes out with a game, if Stonemaier comes out with a game, I buy it. And I haven't been burned by that yet.
Okay.
Some people didn't like Pendulum. Some people didn't like those games that people didn't like. And I'm like, no, I liked it. I liked this game. And so maybe I'm a huge apologist for him. I'm like, no, it's okay. But whatever. So I love Jamie Stegmaier. I love it, what he does. He overhypes his games definitely, but I don't mind that. I don't mind that. So, but other than that, as far as just straight up designers, because I don't always while I like his games, I don't always love him, his designs. I like a lot of I forgot his name, Daniel Turtzi. So he designed so he does a lot of solo modes in games. So if you look at he designs all the solo modes for Vital Lacerda's games. So in Kanban and On Mars, he designed those. He also designed a game called Imperium, which is a card game. He designed it with another person, but with Nick, I don't remember his name. But yeah, so David Turtzi, not Daniel Turtzi. That's his name, David Turtzi. So he's I don't remember what nationality he is, but he's a good designer. But he's a heavy designer. He's a really thinky guy. And when he's with a design group, he really enhances the game. He does like oh, what game is it? I can't remember um I don't know the name of the game. I'm blanking. You see, as soon as you put someone on the spot, they blank. And so, um, but the Anachrony, that's it.
Okay.
Anachrony, it's a time travel game, and he designed that, and I just think it's fantastic. Most of his things I tend to really like, although it's probably over designed sometimes because that's kind of the designer he is. He over designs things. So when he's with a group and they pare him down a little bit, he usually does really, really well. So
Got it. He needs those other people in the room to say like, okay, let's like
yeah,
one more level down and we're good. Like
yeah,
it'll be accessible.
exactly.
Right. What's the longest play session you've had on a game?
So 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 a friend, my group once bought Twilight Imperium 4, and then we played that. We learned and played it. Um, and people have horror stories of how long that can take. We, however, completed the game in 6 hours. So I don't know how we did it, but we did it. We completed we all of us were brand new players, and we all made sure we came to the game knowing the rules. So we all like shared videos, and some of us even had the rule book, and we got there, we played it, 6 hours done.
Hmm.
So that was probably the longest. So, but it wasn't bad. We had a good time. We enjoyed it quite a bit.
Good. Yeah, it had to be Twilight Imperium, right? That's
Exactly.
kind of the classic like takes forever to play game.
Yeah.
That and Gloomhaven, of course.
Yeah.
So.
Other than that, some 18xx games I played have been like 4 or 5 hours. I mean, not 5, but 4. 4 hours probably is pretty normal for an 18xx game. So,
Yeah.
but other than that, I'm usually when I'm gaming, I tend to, my sweet spot's right about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think those are perfect length games. So
Yeah, I either like, about, like you said, about an hour and a half is like a good game length for a single game, or like give me a 20-minute game where I can play a couple of rounds, or I can play a couple of different 20-minute games at a time, because sometimes playing, if you're playing a game that only takes 20 minutes, like by the third round, it's like, okay, I'm done. Like I want to play something different, or like, let's mix it up, sometimes that repetitiveness gets old.
Yeah, definitely.
With the shorter games. So
yeah, my wife and I, we usually, like, especially at night, like right before bedtime, we might pull out a short 2-player game or whatever, and play something like that. So, or something we really know well, something that we know we can just, bust through the game and get it done. So
yeah, and have a conversation while you're playing instead of trying to figure out the rules. And Blockus for us is one of our kind of go-tos for that, playing in 2-player mode, but it's super lightweight game, and but there's still a little bit of strategy involved, with blocking each other out. We tried Patchwork the other night.
Nice.
So that's another one that's kind of on our
list. Patchwork is a good game.
Yeah. Cool. Are you into any other kind of game, RPGs or CCGs? I mean, I know you've played some RPGs, but
yeah, I've done some RPGs. I did a while ago. I GM'd a Doctor Who game. Okay. That was really fun. I really enjoyed. That was my first experience GMing. And what I would do is I would watch. I was actually watching. At the time, I was watching Star Trek Voyager. And I would actually use plot points from Star Trek Voyager in my game. And that would be like the scenario they would have to go through was actually an episode from Star Trek Voyager. And they hadn't watched Star Trek Voyager. So I was like, oh, it's perfect. So, yeah, you have no idea what's going on, but I do because I watched the show. And I would also use another sci-fi show called Sliders, because in Sliders, it's an older show, but they went through different dimensions and different realities, different alternate realities. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we did. And that was fun. I played like a Star Wars RPG, but only like 2 sessions of it. So I haven't done much RPGs. Doctor Who was the biggest one I've done. So I did video games occasionally. I used to do them a lot more, but then these guys kind of took over. And so...
it's funny the kind of internal battle of like, do I want to play a video game or a board game, and kind of the pull back and forth. I get satisfaction from both. So
and now a lot of games are getting like digital versions, and I honestly haven't dived into many of them. Like I have Scythe, and I even have Loot, I think, on my phone, but I would I'm not one of those guys who like anti-technology. I love technology,
Yeah.
but I kind of enjoy setting up my game of Root and playing it solo. It's very finicky, you know. It's very fiddly of the solo rules. But for me, like I spent X amount of money on that game, and I want to physically touch the game, you know.
Yeah.
If I spend, you know, $8-10 on an app, like okay, I don't care if I play that or not. But if I spend how much I spent on Root, I want to play
Right.
it. So
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is something unique about being able to actually touch the piece and, you know, really roll the dice and really look
yeah.
like hold the cards. Like there is just something a little bit different about having it physically in your hand as opposed to, you know, the screen adaptation, which is fine. And especially if you're, you know, a gamer on the go, like, and you know, I'm not going to bring it on the plane with me, but I can play it on my phone. Like, okay, then that's, you know, definitely a great use. Or if you're trying to be competitive with something like Catan, like, okay, then, you know, you're probably going to want to have a digital version so you can practice, right? So, but yeah, I agree with you. There is something just a little bit unique and different about being able to actually touch the pieces. So,
and that's kind of my thing. I really focus on, I call it getting my money out of a game, you know.
right.
And I have I'm a finance guy. I have a spreadsheet. I track all my plays, and I make sure that by the end of it, I feel that by the time I either stop playing it or sell it or donate or whatever, I want to feel like I got my utility, my money's worth out of it, you know. So I really value that a lot. I really make sure that I try and get there. So I do pretty good.
Good. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's many on my shelf back here that are still on the shelf of shame, unfortunately. Yep. So trying to get some groups together to play, but it's challenging.
This past year, so I have a son who's 3 years old.
Okay.
And when he was 2, it was fantastic, like 1 or 2, because he would take, you know, an hour and a half, 2-hour nap in the middle of the day, and that was right at the start of, you know, everything. Right. I don't want to say the word, but everything. Mm-hmm. And so my wife and I were home, and we're like, oh, let's play a game. And so we would pull out a game and play a game. It was perfect.
Yeah.
But now he doesn't nap anymore, and he's staying up later. So then by the time he finally goes to bed, we're exhausted. And so we don't want to play anything. We'd rather sit and watch a TV show for an hour than trying to set up a game. So this past year, I've accumulated so many games and played so few of them. I think my shelf of shame is up to like 20 games, and I don't even know. I have no idea how I'm going to play them at this point. I hope I do. I will, but it's trying to find the time to do it is hard.
Yeah, for that reason, we keep a copy of Hungry Hippos and Mr. Mouth on standby because I have a 4-year-old, so he's the same way. Like if we sit down to play a game, he wants to play a game.
You want to play a game, yeah.
I don't want to play Trouble again for the 300th time. Like, I appreciate that you want to play, but also I want some intellectual stimulation here. So we keep some Hungry Hippos so we can kind of, you know, play a simple card game on the side while we smack the hippos or something. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Ian, if people want to learn more about you or find your socials, where can they find you?
Yeah, so TikTok and YouTube, BoardFeelings for both of them. So board as in like board games, and then feelings. So that's me. I post sporadically on TikTok just because that's kind of like when inspiration strikes, I'll make something. But YouTube, I try and post minimum every other week, sometimes weekly, depending on my schedule and other things that are going on. But yeah, so BoardFeelings on both of those.
Awesome. Well, make sure you check it out. Appreciate you coming on the show today, Ian. It was a pleasure to have you on, and looking forward to having you on in the future.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you for having me.